a dude that's right there on the corner, and he's on the floor. Oh, he's just overdosing. And I said to him, "Yo, you got Narcan in your truck?" And he's like, "No, I don't." And I had just given my last one away, so I knew I didn't have any. And there's this chick standing there, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry about him, baby. We already hit him 3 times. The ambulance is on the way. He's breathing." And she's pregnant, right? And she's like, "Y'all good?" And I'm like, "Nah, like we're good." And she's like, "Y'all looking for a date?" We're like, "Nah, we're good," right? So I mean, literally 10 minutes. Like we get solicited 3 times. We see a guy overdosing. Ambulance pulls up as we're leaving. We get propositioned by a pregnant hooker, right? And like, like that.
There's your
normal
content.
People, right?
There's your content.
Right, but like.
Welcome back to the show, Charlie.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate you inviting me back on, man. I had a great time the first time, so I'm looking forward to it.
I love the shirt. I already called it the John shirt for Wawa.
You already know. You already know, my guy.
That's one of my favorite shirt. I've been seeing that pop up all over the place, and every time I see it, I just giggle. Like it just makes me laugh to think that shirt is out there. Like that cracks me up.
I get comments about it, comments about it all the time, particularly in Wawa's.
Yeah.
The employees really love it, man. I've been asked where I got it so many times.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Thanks,
bro.
Thank you.
And speaking of, I mean, this is why we linked up again. This isn't why we've been chatting and friends this entire time. But last night, you and I both celebrated, I'm sure, but celebrated in a sober way. And I can't tell you that went the same way in 2008. I can't even remember parts of 2008, let alone being able to be happy and celebrate and not like I'm going to go drink my brain cells.
Right.
For people that don't know, Chalie and I are both diehard Philly fans of. If it's Philly, we're fans of it.
Right. So I'm not a big. I'll preface this with I'm not a big baseball guy. Right. I'm more of a football and a basketball guy. But I'm 4 for 4. Right. Like I'm happy that they're in there.
Yeah.
My brother is a huge Phillies fan. My fiance is a Phillies fan. A lot of her family, a lot of my friends. I'm just not a big baseball guy, but I'm super happy for the team. And like you said, bro, like I'm from here, born and raised, lived here my whole life. So obviously, like I was happy that they made it. And yeah, like the best way I can kind of equate it is like the Super Bowl in 2017, right? Like I had a little bit of clean time at that time, and so when you had messaged me about doing this and talking about this, topic specifically, like I can remember. I mean, look, for guys like me, and I'm sure for like you, right? Like it didn't matter. I was on for anything, right? If it was a fucking Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I was using. You know what I mean? So particularly for something like that, like yeah, of course. And that was an interesting time. I had a little bit of clean time at that time when they won the Super Bowl, and I watched that Super Bowl clean and sober, which was an odd thing, right? In '08 when the Phillies won, again, not a big baseball guy, but I was not clean at that time, and celebrated with friends and stuff like that, and yeah, totally different experience, bro. Totally different.
It's crazy because I equate in 2008, I literally like had my you know how they talk about the moment you arrived is when you realized that you were like, well, I had that happen in October 2008. So like me becoming a pill addict stemmed directly into, one, it wasn't like I was celebrating all that October. Obviously we won a bunch of big games, but I was celebrating in a way of, now I'm like, well, where was I? Like, and I hate even having to think that way. And in 2017, when the Eagles won, I was not clean yet. I definitely 100%. I did not go to any of the parades because my priorities were on getting high and staying high. They weren't on celebrating this big parade. And now I look back, I'm like, you fucking idiot.
And what's funny right? I kind of came at that from an opposite viewpoint, right? Like I was clean at that time, but I was essentially just white knuckling it. I wasn't like working a program or anything like that at that time. And I didn't go because I wasn't using. And I was like, I can't go down there and deal with a million people, you know what I mean? Like, and not being able to use. So like me and my girlfriend at the time stayed away from it. She wasn't a big football fan anyway, so it wasn't like a big thing. But I definitely watched the game with with some
Now,
friends and stuff.
speaking of football, where are you coming up with the idea to do your TikToks and the ones that you've been posting, like coming up with like the original logos and the different stadiums?
So full transparency, right? They're not my videos.
Okay.
I didn't make those videos, right? So those videos are from 2020. NFL Films had made them, right? And I just recently signed up for Peacock, right? And Peacock is NBC's streaming platform, and they have Sunday Night Football, right? They have that contract. So on Peacock, they have some football stuff, right? And the History of the Stadiums episode of NFL Films is on Peacock. And I was like, oh man, I remember seeing this a couple years ago. It's pretty cool, right? As an Eagles guy, right? I went on YouTube, I found it, I clipped. It's like an hour and a half long video with every team. I clipped the Eagles one, screen recorded it, and posted it to TikTok, and it kind of blew up, right? And then all these people started asking for the other teams in the comments, and I'm just, I was like, all right, cool. Like, somebody was like, do the Cowboys, and I didn't want to do the Cowboys, right? And I didn't want to do the Giants, you know what I mean? But like everybody started asking for teams, and I just started doing them, and it just, I mean, man, it blew up out of nowhere. I didn't expect any of that.
Listen, man, clipping it and doing it is still work. It's not the easiest thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like we just talked about Segura the other day, right? You just went down Atlantic City and saw him, and then Bert was just in town.
Great show, man.
Bert was in town like a month ago in Atlantic City.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen me in TikTok, but I have a TikTok page called Two Bears, One Talk. And all I do is
post, I don't.
Really? All I do is post Tom and Bert related content. And I go to YouTube.
I gotta get on there.
I have 126,000 followers.
How did I not know about this, bro? That's your page?
That's my page.
I think I may already follow it because like I'm kind of late to the party when it came to Tom and YMH and all that, right? Like I just got onto it like 2 years ago. I was already a fan of Tom, but I didn't really watch the podcast. My brother kind of got me onto it. And over the last 2 years, man, I've become a huge fan of what Tim and Christine do on their podcast.
Yeah.
And Two Bears, One Cave. Bro, I think I may already follow that page. I did not know that was you, JD.
Already. I mean, like I said, I don't know who follows it by now because every time I go on,
so many followers.
There's 100 notifications every time I go on. And I don't have that kind of time to scroll, but all I do is go to YouTube. I find funny videos of them from either their podcast or when they're doing stand-up, and I screen record it. I'll add captions to it. You know what I mean? Dress it up a bit,
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I was doing for the last 4 months when I wasn't making this podcast. Is I was directing my attention towards just cutting funny clips because I'm back in therapy, you know what I mean? So like I needed something besides like when I was cutting clips from these episodes, I'm not to say it was depressing me, but my job was to find that thing that was going to emotionally grab somebody. So I was watching a lot of content that's dark and it's my own, but it was a lot. And then when I stepped away, just for like, I took 6 months off and I needed it. And I was like, I got to be creative. And I miss doing stand up. I used to do stand up around Philly, around Chinatown. I used to bounce in and out of every Sunday. My first ever time performing ever was at Helium in Philly. That was my first time ever on a stage, was at one of the best clubs in Philly.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was like, I need to find a way to like look at funny videos all day. And so I have one that's like every comedian possible. And that one's got a decent following too. But that Two Bears, One Talk, man, all of a sudden I had like 10,000 followers in like 3 days. 20,000, 30. I'm like, holy shit. Like, why can't they go to my other? Why can't
Yeah,
they go?
right.
But I give you full credit still. The point of my story and how this comes back around is I still give you full credit for cutting the clips up the way that you do, because I know how tedious that work is. You
Yeah,
know,
I appreciate it. And I did get some hate from people. Like I said, I just started it with the Eagles one because that's my team, right? And I just posted it because I post Eagles stuff, right? And it kind of started to blow up, and people started asking for the other teams in the comments, and I was like, I might as well just do it, right? So I ended up, it was over like 2 or 3 days. I ended up, waiting for people to ask for their teams, and then it just got to every team. And I got some hate in the comments, like, because people were, like, oh, could you please do like the Broncos? And then people were like, yo, this isn't his content. He's just a YouTube ripper and this and that. And like I gave, I used the hashtag, NFL films, NFL throwback. And I checked NFL's, the NFL's page, and NFL Films doesn't have an official page. And they weren't posting this stuff. So it was like, whatever. And then I was worried about like copyright if they were going to try to take it down, because, I also post one of my favorite shows on TV is Last Week Tonight. And I clips from that show, and I've already had some things from that taken down because they don't have a TikTok.
with John Oliver.
And yeah,
Yeah, we watch that.
so
Yeah, there's one of the best
great show.
episodes that, in my opinion, it was from like 3-4 years ago when he was breaking down all the rehab hopping.
Yes.
Like he really explores things in a way that a lot of it's like the Daily Show. If the Daily Show was an hour long once a week, that's what it reminds me of. That same kind of vibe.
Yeah. It's probably my favorite show on television, and almost every week I post stuff from it. And so there's somebody named Drew at Warner Brothers that has put in copyright infringement. Put those in against me on TikTok, and I've had quite a few of them taken down, but I keep posting them because, they don't take them all down. And, if they had a TikTok, I probably wouldn't do it, but I still do it. And, it is what it is. But yeah, as far as the NFL thing, man, like it came out of nowhere. Like it was honestly just, an organic type thing. People were asking for their teams, and I was like, you know what? I'm a man of the people. Like, you know what I mean? So I just started.
And that's kind of how it morphed into that with me. I get it. Like I was when I was posting about comedians only, I ended up getting up to 70,000 followers, and then TikTok shut my page down. But it was only because of Gilbert Gottfried. Gilbert Gottfried kept getting me so much like community standards.
Yeah.
Like the favorite joke, I don't even know if I can say it because it's that I don't care. It's gonna be on YouTube. So
I think I already know which one you're gonna say.
What's the worst thing about eating your grandmother out?
No, I don't know this one.
Hitting your head on the coffin on the way out.
Yeah, that's good.
That shit got me taken down so fast.
Yeah.
So I had one that was laughter is a drug, and I was posting. At first it was George Carlin's birthday. And I posted 7 dirty words like George Carlin. And then like all of a sudden I was getting all this. I'm like, oh, well, let me put in other comedians and blowing up more and more and more. And then when they took that down, that page was at 71,000 followers. And TikTok took it down. And I was so disheartened. And I'm like, man, what am I going to, like, that was fun for me to find comedians. And
I did follow that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one you probably did. And then I was sitting around watching Bert and Tom because I watch them weekly. And I'm like, why am I not cutting clips up of just them and just like kind of doing 2 Bears, 1 Talk and just there is already a 2 Bears, 1 Talk podcast page, but I give them full credits. Like it's not like, and if you go to my page, it says #fan page. I'm not unofficial. Like I want to make sure I'm just posting, because I don't want people thinking like, oh, I'm just like a clout chaser or anything like that. Like I'm not getting any. I'm not trying to get paid by TikTok. Like that's one thing. If you or me were making money off of it, then maybe it's like,
Well,
But
yeah, and that's what I was getting some of those comments too, right? It was funny, like there was this one, I forget which video it's on, but somebody was like, "Oh, he's just ripping these off of NFL Films page," and I was like, and I went in the comments and I was like, "Yeah, I am." Like
yeah,
that's
you
why I
can too.
hashtagged them,
Yeah,
right?
you can too, bro. And
And
you can start your own page and see how that goes, because this isn't an
yeah,
easy thing.
and somebody was like, "Yeah, well, he's getting paid off of it," and then I was like in the comments, like, "I wish." Like, first of all, you got to get to 10,000 followers to monetize it whatsoever. And even at 10,000, like I'm at like 16,000 now. Even at 10,000 followers, bro, the what you can make is minuscule. Like you have to have well over 1 million followers to make any type of
And
real money.
community standards. You have to never be breaking the
Yes,
rules. And if you break
right.
the rules, then but look behind me. There's Tom right there.
Yeah,
That's Bert and Tom, Sober
yeah,
October. I got Bert over
yeah,
there, the Body Shots World Tour.
yeah.
I even
It's
have
awesome, man.
the right behind me. That's Mitzi Shore. She started the Comedy Store, Pauly Shore's
Yeah.
mom.
It's Paulie's mom. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Rogan has a really similar one of the painting.
Okay.
Rogan has one in his office that's kind of similar, and my wife's like, I could do that. I'm like, yes, get it for me because I need it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, Bert and Tom, man, like people that don't know, if you're watching my podcast and look for something funny, Two Bears, One Cave, like I watch it.
Yeah.
And that was like my introduction to podcasting. I didn't like
Okay.
listen to anybody's podcast, and someone's like, oh, they have their own now. And I'm like, well, they both crack me up in their stand up. Let me see what this is all about. And then I was hooked on podcasts ever since then. That was 2019 because I was just started dating my wife at the time. And now 3 years later, and I do have a bunch of different podcasts that I do. And, because I have this one, and then I have one called Secondhand News, where my friend in Massachusetts and we give each other the news from the people that brought you the news. Like, we're not the news, like.
Okay.
Like last week, I had like 10 of my favorite headlines of the week, and I would run them by her to see if she could figure out what the headlines mean. Like almost like guess guess the content based on the headline.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's fun, man, because it's just last week was 25 minutes of us talking about How I Met Your Mother. So the rants that we go on, and I don't try to censor myself, and I don't have to worry about certain content or it's whatever. But this show has been good because I'm learning podcasting with this. Like I've reached out to people all over the world and got to meet people like yourself, where it's crazy the parallels our years of addiction had with each other, you and I.
Yeah.
We could have easily intertwined at any of those points of you living in South Jersey. I used to, one of my not favorite stories to tell, but it's a story nonetheless. You know how it is when you were a middleman, you would try to middle so that you get yourself hooked up all the time.
Absolutely.
And then I would hook up my dealer with other, like I found out this one dude in South Philly was selling them for like $10 a piece, but you had to buy bulk. And I didn't have bulk money, but my dealer did. So like I'm working out deals where we'd take him over to Philly. Dude, South Philly, for people that don't know, is all one ways. Like you can't go anywhere but one way. And and they're all, and they don't make sense. Like New York City, they all make sense. But in Philly, there's like little, like, what do you call them? With like grass in the middle, like a little median, but it'll be all weird. And especially in South Philly.
Median. Yeah, median.
Yeah, but a median for no reason. A median for no reason. Except for just direct traffic. And I do this deal, and we get like a 230s. And we get back in this car, and of course it's a dealer, so he's got to have a flashy car because you know how. So we're in this flashy car, and I put them in my junk because it's the only place I figure I could hide something was right in there. They're in a plastic bag, so they're, And of course we pull out of this place. I'm the one that set up the meat and everything, and we get pulled over right away. Right away, as soon as we make the left. Cops ringing us up and pulling us over, and I'm sweating literally my balls off with these things in there, and I'm waiting, and they make you wait too. The Philly cops love to make you wait and stew in your car before they even approach you. They want to see if you're going to get out and run. They're going to see what is he going to do with this time. And we just sat there, and the person I was with wasn't an addict. He was strictly a businessman. and I was the addict, being the in-betweener. And the cop comes up and he knocks on the window, of course, that whole thing, throw it down. He goes, you went down the wrong way, down the one way. Can we leave, officer? Yeah, just make a right and a left and you'll be good. All right, have a good night.
Holy shit. Yeah, you got lucky, bro.
I swear that 3 minutes in between him coming to the car and him pulling us over felt like 3 hours.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. We went right
I remember
down.
one time way back in the day. So, back when North Philly was, down the way, right? When everybody went to North Philly for everything. And there was four of us in the car. And this is probably like, I don't know, maybe like 97 or 98. So I'm like 18 or 19 years old. We go down there and, so one dude in the car wants powder. Somebody else wants tree. Somebody else wants this, right? So we go down there. We hit like 3 or 4 spots. And the last spot we hit was for the tree at 5th and Luzerne. And we come off that block and we go to hit the corner and cop jumps behind us, lights us up, right? So I'm in the passenger seat and there's a guy that I don't really know that well, but he's sitting right behind me. And he's like, yo, give me everything. I got a stash spot, right? So everybody is like real nonchalant, like trying to hand their shit back to him. And everybody hands it back to him. And, cops come up on both sides. And the cop that's coming up on the passenger side, I hear him because it's in the summertime. We all got our windows down. And we're in like a early 90s Hyundai Excel hatchback. And
so 2-door with 2 people in the back.
Right.
Okay.
So he comes walking up and he goes, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, and he's, "All right, everybody out." And they start pulling us out. Here, the guy behind us still had half the shit on his lap. Right. He didn't get to put it in his stash spot. Right. So they pull all 4 of us out of the car. So the 4 of us are in the front of the car, like 2 on one side, 2 on the other side with our hands on the hood. They put all the shit up on top of the car. Right. And the 2 cops are like at the back of the car and they're talking, right? And me and this guy are on the passenger side of the car with our hands on the hood. And the one cop walks up and he goes, "That's flour and oregano, right?" to this kid. And he don't say nothing. And the cop goes, "That's flour and oregano, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is, officer." And he goes, "All right, dump it down the gutter." So I knock it off the car and I'm kicking it into the gutter, right? And he's like, "All right, you know 4 white dudes, right?" He's like, "You 4 shouldn't be down here. That's what they're telling us, right? You shouldn't be around here. You have no business around here and you know it. Just get out of here." So they let us go. And then we got back to our neighborhood and I beat the shit out of that dude who was in the back seat because, he said he had a stash spot and the stash spot was his Timberland. Like, what are you talking about? Like, everybody has shoes on. That's not a stash spot. Like, what do you mean?
You're not walking in from trying to sneak past your parents.
Right.
Like, they're going to. Oh, my God. And people say white privilege doesn't exist.
You're
and looking at it.
That, yeah. Right here. I've had it happen quite a few times.
I remember, and that's still to this day I consider white privilege, and it is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. But I'm just like, I'm not also ignorant to the fact that I got lucky a bunch of times. Like,
Same.
I got arrested with 20/30s on me, and they took me in, and I was released 2 hours later. And when I went to court for everything, it was 9 months later because I ended up going to rehab. And I went to rehab 3 weeks after I had my preliminary hearing for this arrest. So when I was flying out to rehab, I'm like, oh shit, I got court in 2 weeks. Like, I forgot all about it. So it had nothing to do with it. And I come back from California. Now I'm sober 9 months or whatever. And I go to confront all of these things waiting for me because they had me in a school zone. I'm like, bullshit, you pull me over in the school zone. I wasn't stopping in the school zone. So it wasn't like I had drugs in the school zone. I was driving through it, and this is where you chose to pull me over. There's a big difference. But I went there, and I'm like, they're like, where have you been the last 9 months? You disappeared, and you had court. I'm like, well, we reached out. I was in rehab. I just got home a few weeks ago. And they're like, oh, so when you got arrested, you went to rehab? I'm like, no. I honestly forgot all about this when I went to rehab. I went to rehab because I was done doing drugs and I wanted to learn how to live a different life. They're like, oh, most people would have lied and just said, to like court and it looks better. I'm like, yeah, I'm not lying anymore. That's why I'm telling you something so blatantly honest. And I got everything dropped down to 20 unidentifiable pills and some green leafy substance.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they dropped
Yeah.
it down to.
Right.
And I know, you know what I mean? Like, and when they pulled me over in that car, in that flashy car, it was like a two-door Acura. You know what I mean? Like, no
Hmm.
business being in South Philly at 11 o'clock at night with Jersey tags.
Right.
And, I think he was just making sure we knew how to get out of there. I think that cop just wanted
Mm.
us out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because, and I grew up outside of Camden. And I remember when I got my driver's license, and I was always in school suspension because I was always cutting school. And I'm in school suspension, and they had like a retired Camden cop that came to our school every day and sat with the in school suspension. This dude was just ripped, man. Like, I mean, like he was a professional bodybuilder kind of ripped at one point. Mr. Martino is his name. And I was like, oh, I got my license today, Mr. Martino. He goes, oh, yeah? He goes, I better not hear you go around Camden. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, if you're white in Camden, you're either buying drugs or you're lost. So I'm gonna give you a little advice. I'm like, oh yeah, because it's so easy to be going to the Cherry Hill Mall and you make one wrong
Oh yeah.
turn and you're in Camden. You're right in the thick of it if you make one wrong turn about 1:30. So he goes, you ever get lost going to the mall, you might end up in Camden. This is what you got to do. You pull up the red lights and run them until you get pulled over. Safely run them. And when they pull you over, you tell them Tony Martino told you to do that. Sure as shit, I was in Camden like 2, 3 months later buying beer. And I got ripped off because that's what you get when you ask somebody on the street to buy you liquor. So I'm driving back all pissed. And now, like, I'm lost. This is 2004, 2005. Like, I didn't have a GPS to get me out of there. My
Right.
phone was barely a flip phone back then.
Yeah.
And so I pulled up to the red light and I saw a cop was sitting like on Broadway by the jail. And we made eye contact, and then I blew through the blew through the red light, and then he gets behind me, and then he watched me blow two more before he pulls me over, and he finally comes up to my window. He goes, what was that? We made eye contact, and then you blew through the light. I'm like, listen, man, I was going to the mall. I ended up taking the wrong turn, and Tony Martino told me to do this if I ever got lost. He goes, oh, Tony's a great guy. How about I follow me out of here? I'm like, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah. That's that's real lucky, man. That's real lucky. I've had
And
a lot of those, a lot of those run-ins, especially like when you're when you're from Jersey and you have access to Camden, or you're from Philly and you have access to Kensington or North Philly, particularly back in the day, I remember like North Philly. I mean, there was so many spots where, I mean, I don't know if you ever heard of Fifth and Luzerne. Fifth and Luzerne was a weed spot back in the day, and you literally pulled off this little block and turned back onto this other little block, and there's four dudes on the block, two on this side, two on this side, and dude would come up to your window and be like, "What do you want?" And they sold dime bags, and give your money to them, and then a dude runs out of an alleyway on the other side and tosses them into the window, right? And then like I remember being down there so many times, and then you would hear the whoop whoop, and the paddy wagon would come on the block and chase everybody away, and then you come back 5 minutes later. You
yep.
know what I mean? And that's just the way it was.
This
And
podcast is also sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are looking for therapy and not able to get something right away locally, you can do that with them. Within 48 hours, you can find a therapist to get on telehealth with you. I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people that have already done it, that watch my show or listen to my show. If you're looking to get 10% off your first month, you can go to betterhelp.com/MJSPNPMCA. That is betterhelp.com/MJSPNPMCA.
and like I remember there was a spot at 8th and Waterloo where there was it was a store, and you walked into the store and all they had was one refrigerated cabinet with like six sodas in it and bulletproof glass, and like a rack of chips or whatever behind it, and they sold blunts and Dutches and stuff like that, and White Owls back then, and papers, and they sold dime bags. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it was. And then it's funny. Like I tell people like who aren't from here, like they don't really understand. Like when I, use the term open air drug market, and people just don't get what that means.
Yeah.
And you try to explain it to them, and it's like they really don't understand like what it was like. And then, I don't know if you remember Operation Sunrise in Philly's like the early 2000s, and they shut down North Philly for like a whole summer.
Really?
There was just beat cops out walking around, and it never really went back to the same way that it was. I mean, it was wild. I mean, it was like the Wild West back then
Yeah.
in the
And
90s,
it,
and it
I
really
think it's a
changed
lot
after that.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, I feel like, back in the day, like we called North Philly down the way, and that was where you go and get anything, right? And now it's more Kensington. I mean, I know Kensington is technically in North Philly, but, down more a little bit. So it's in Kensington now, and like where I live, there's certain meetings that I go to, that I drive. There's one in particular that like I drive right by Needle Park, like literally like right along the side of it. It's called McPherson Park for people who don't know. And in Philly we call it Needle Park. And there's just people just out there. I mean, it's like zombie land, right? I mean, it's people using, people nodding out. And I drive right past there, and this might sound, I don't know, it might sound a little bit insensitive, or however people want to take it, but in certain ways it keeps it green for me, right? Because I see that, and I know that I'm just one bad decision and a couple other bad decisions behind that from being there, right? Like been there, done that, don't want to fucking do it again, right? Like
And some of the best recovery comes from those areas, because there are people that are stuck by. Like when I was living in LA and we got sober, they would take us to meetings in Compton.
yeah,
And they would take us, like I went to it was a CA meeting in Compton where crack was huge, and it was by candlelight, and it was called Fourth Dimension, Into the Fourth Dimension. And it was one of the best meetings to go to on a Friday night. I was definitely one of three white boys. The other two were with me.
yeah.
And we got brought there by the guy that worked in our place, and he would take us there. And then we went to Skid Row one day. And because why not? And I was, and this time I was as the sober living, not in treatment. And I went there like as a chaperone with all the inpatient, because we want to show them how close you are to being down here. Now, I don't see LA ever becoming like Philly when it comes to the open air market. It's more under the radar when it comes out. And Philly, people just don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's really wild, man. I've lived here my whole life. I'm 43 years old, and I'm born and raised in Frankfurt, which is like the next neighborhood over from Kensington. And like I remember Kensington in the 90s, like when I was a teenager and stuff. And I mean, it was bad. Don't get me wrong. Like there was a lot of wild shit going on, but like I can't even explain it. Like it's all right. So I'll tell you this, right? So me and a friend of mine, a couple months ago, there was a trend going around on TikTok with I forget the girl who sings the song, but it's that "How Did You Get Here?" And the first one that I had saw was a guy was walking into the gym, and the song's playing, right? "How did you get here?" And as he hits the door, it turns into like a Chick-fil-A, right? And he's like, like how did, because he was, had the intention of going to the gym, but then he ends up at like a fast food joint, and it's an older like R&B song, right? So I said to my friend, I was like, yo, we should go. This sounds so fucked up, but I was like, we should go down to Kensington, and we should like, film something as if we're going to a meeting, and then when the "How did you get here" pops, we're at K&A, right? And some people don't find that type of humor funny, you know what I mean? Because it's, I don't know, I guess some people think it's insensitive or whatever, but like I can joke today about my addiction. So we did that, right? So we went to Kensington, right to K&A, Kensington and Allegheny, and bro, we were literally there for 10 minutes, right? And I tell people like us this story, and they're like, yeah, okay, especially people from Philly, but like, normal people are like, what are you talking about? So we were literally there for 10 minutes. We parked up our cars right off of Allegheny, like a block down. We're walking up to Kensington Ave, and just that one block walk. We got offered shit twice. Then we get to the corner of K&A, and we're trying to figure out where we're going to, like, shoot this part, right? And there's a dude that's right there on the corner, and he's on the floor. Oh, he's just overdosing. And I said to him, yo, you got Narcan in your truck? And he's like, no, I don't. And I had just given my last one away, so I knew I didn't have any. And there's this chick standing there, and she's like, oh, don't worry about him, baby. We already hit him 3 times. The ambulance is on the way. He's breathing. And she's pregnant, right? And she's like, y'all good? And I'm like, nah, like, we're good. And she's like, y'all looking for a date? We're like, nah, we're good, right? So, I mean, literally 10 minutes, like, we get solicited 3 times. We see a guy overdosing. Ambulance pulls up as we're leaving. You know, we get propositioned by a pregnant hooker, right? And, like, you know, like that.
There's
to
your
normal
content.
People, right?
There's your content.
Right, but like to normal people, right? Like that sounds like insane. And like, what do you talk? Like you were there for 10 minutes, and like I've told people, and they can't believe it, right? But like, messed up as it sounds, it's like that's regular. You know what I mean? That's just regular shit in Kensington, and we become so desensitized to it. You know what I mean? Like being in this type of lifestyle, you know, that I lived in and you lived in for a long time, like you just become desensitized to those type of things. And, you know, you become desensitized to loss. You know, you become desensitized, you know, to people going back out and relapse and dying, overdosing and stuff like that. And, you know, it's weird, man. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's just kind of comes with the territory.
Yep, and it is, and I can. That's what I was talking about earlier. I was completely just taking in all this content, all these stories, and you've been a fan of my show, so you've heard some stories in the last year. I put out episodes. Like there's been some where I'm just like, you know, and all I can do is just, is it off me yet? Is it like, because all you're doing is taking this in, you're absorbing all of this, and then next thing you know, something bad happens, and you don't react in a way that's supposed to be normal because you're so desensitized to everything else. And it's almost a defense mechanism to be desensitized because it takes away that power of being able to hurt me again.
Yeah, and I'm at, like, it's weird, right? Like I was just talking to, I don't know, about a month or so ago, like I was talking to my fiance about like this issue, and it kind of falls in line with this, right? Like, so I'm at a point now where, like my recovery is pretty strong at this point. Like I got a little over like 2 years and 8 months, and like the obsession to use has been lifted, right, for a while now. And you know, they say that you know, it can take anywhere between 18 and 36 months for your mind to kind of get back to normal, like normal chemical levels and stuff like that. And I really started to notice that when I was a little over 2 years clean. I started to notice like my train of thought was starting to change, and the way I reacted to certain things started to change, and like, you know, dealing with my mental health. And, you know, I am on medication every day for that. And I talked with a psychiatrist for about the first year that I was clean. So all, you know, putting in the work, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
trying to
got
be a
my
better
psych head. Yep, exactly. I do my psych once a month, and I got therapy 4 times a month. You know,
right.
And
So I was talking to my fiance, and I was saying to her, like, I've been asked a few times for guys if I'll sponsor them, right? And you know, I tell them, like, look, I don't feel like, you know, the last one was like maybe 2 months ago, and I told them, like, you know, I don't feel like I'm at a place where I can be a sponsor. You know, and I break my own anonymity all the time, right? I'm an active member of NA, but I support all pathways of recovery. And I, you know, told guys like that, you know, I don't feel like I'm at a place in my recovery where I can take on sponsees. And I thought that I was saying that genuinely, but I really feel like they're part of it. And I talked to my fiance about it, and then talked to my sponsor about it. I feel like part of it is kind of what we're talking about, JD. It's that fear of taking on a sponsee and them relapsing and having to deal with that on a sponsee level, right? But that's also selfish, man. Like, and I'm being selfish to them. I'm being selfish to myself, because I know as well as anybody, if I go back out tonight, that's not my sponsor's fault. You know what I'm saying? Like, why, I don't know. Like, I have a hard time taking help sometimes, and I fully understand that relationship of a sponsor-sponsee is such a two-way street, right? And like my sponsor tells me all the time, like, how do you feel when you help somebody? How does that make you feel, right? And I tell him, like, it makes me feel good. And he's like, right. So why would you deprive somebody of that, right? And when I look at it that way, maybe I'm depriving myself of that out of fear.
It's almost like you don't want to have kids because you had a bad childhood.
Right, right, yeah.
And afraid.
Good analogy.
And it's something that happens all the time where people were like, oh, I the way I grew up, I don't want to have kids. And you hear that all the time. But you never know if you're ready until you actually become a father all of a sudden. Then that's when you know, like, okay, well, it was thrust upon me, and here we go. I've sponsored people. I've sponsored people that I just met. And then I've also sponsored people that I knew from addiction, from growing up, and I knew them in addiction, and I sponsored them too. And it's like anything else, any relationship, you can't blame one sponsee for the other sponsees. You know what I mean? Like, and you have to have your fresh pair of kid gloves on both of them. And I'm still really good friends with the one guy I sponsored for a little while. He straight said to me, I'm sober still, but I need somebody to help guide me through getting over my ex. So we took the word alcohol and replaced it with her name. And then went through the steps about how he was powerless to her and all that stuff. And it worked. He's still, I want to say sober. he never went back.
Yeah.
But it's
cool,
weird, man. But yeah, the guy had more time than me, but he just knew that he could talk to me. And just so I didn't have to like really guide him through. It was a good first sponsee to have because I didn't have the pressure of taking him through the book. He just needed somebody to openly talk with, like his old sponsor.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, and then I've had a guy where, I'm still technically sponsoring him. I consider my sponsee. We haven't done any work lately, but we talk all the time. So I feel like right now, like he needs me as that like friend, and we talk that way as friends. And I don't like try to come at him, and if he comes to me for advice, then I give him advice. So, sponsee relationships will always be different for each sponsee. Right. And I will say you do get that gratification, though, of helping somebody out. You see them getting a chip, and you see that it's actually clicking in their head for the first time. And you're like me, you're a really animated dude, so you can easily get people, and there's no wonder why people are like, hey, were you interested in doing a sponsor? Because you kind of, you give off that energy of like, oh, what does he know? I want to know what he knows. I want to know what his secret is. So I'm not trying to force you into it or guilt you into it, but that's the reason I enjoy sponsoring people is because it's not like I'm any more sober today because I sponsored somebody. It's not that. I'm not more sober, but I can have gratification. That is a selfish thing. Just like it's selfish to not get a sponsee, it's also selfish to get sponsees. It's like those guys out there that are dads to like 3 different women. You know what I mean? They keep on plugging away like football players. What's his name? Or no, was it an NBA player?
Antonio Cromartie's got like 12 kids by like 9 different women or something like that.
Something like that. Wild. From the Jets, right? He was on the Jets.
He played for the Jets, played for the Chargers. Yeah. He just had another one recently.
Yeah. Like, that's what I mean. Like, that's selfish. That's somebody being straight up selfish.
Yeah.
You're just making little mini hymns all over the place. Like, man, you know how much this is costing you out of your pocket?
Like, well, there was that joke. You remember Sean Kemp back in the day, basketball player?
Yeah.
There was a joke about him that he had a baby mom in every NBA city because he had like 10 or 11 kids by like, 8 or 9 different women back in the day too. So
Cromartie's like, here, hold my jockstrap. Watch this.
Yeah, hold this. Yeah.
But we'll circle back all the way to sports, man.
Yeah.
it's such a good feeling to be able to actually watch sports and not wake up hungover. It's
Yeah.
different. I
Yeah.
remember what I watched. I don't have to like. I remember the first Super Bowl that I was getting super high during, and it was 2009, the Cardinals and the Steelers, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we couldn't find any 30s that day. I ended up buying a girl's script of fives offer, and we did like 35s.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
eating handfuls at
Yep.
a time.
That's what
And
you
I
gotta do.
look back now, I'm like, you're such an idiot. Like that's all I can't take back what I did. I can't take back the drugs that I did. All I can do is say you're such an idiot
Yeah.
and just move on because I don't want to take myself too seriously. And I
Right.
know, you're obviously the same way where, we're big guys, so I don't want to, I want to put off little guy energy so that you actually give me a chance.
I remember the Super Bowl that the Eagles went to in what's that, '04 against the Patriots. I have no recollection of watching that game. You know what
I
I mean?
can
Like
tell you that
I remember I was somewhere with a bunch of people watching it, but I don't like remember the night at all.
I remember it was my first time doing whippets.
Ah.
Yeah, no wonder why it killed. It literally was killing my brain.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I was watching the game with my buddy, who's a diehard Eagles fan to this day, like diehard Eagles first, everything. And we were hanging out with his older sister who bought us alcohol then, and her boyfriend. And her boyfriend is the one like, "Oh, you guys whipped cream?" We're like, "What?" He goes, "Watch this." And he started showing us whippets, and then I must have 4 or 5 new holes just from that Eagles game. That my dad never just talked. Was that 24-21? We lost that.
Yeah, 24-20, 24-21, or yeah, it was
24-20, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah, it was close.
Well, because they're saying that us playing against the Astros is like the Eagles playing against the Patriots. Both teams were accused of cheating.
Yeah.
Neither team faced any penalties for it.
Right.
And
they're going to be like the huge, like they're going to be a huge underdog, the Phillies.
The Phillies, yeah. And it's so funny because people generally hate our sports. They hate Philly sports, everything.
Oh,
but when it comes down to it, to root for us or root for the Astros, everyone hates the Astros more than it's the same. Everyone hated the Patriots more than they hated the Eagles. It's
yeah. That's funny, man. That's funny.
So, but I found it important for us to sit down and talk and let people know, like, you don't have to drink to enjoy sports, or you don't have to drink to enjoy any hobby that you used to have before you got into alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I never would have thought that that I'd be able to do anything clean and sober, right? But like, I watch the game every Sunday. I watch Sixers games. I'll probably watch some of the World Series games because, like I said, my fiance is a fan. My brother and his wife are huge Phillies fans. And my sister-in-law and her fiance, they're big Phillies fans too. Like, the opening game of the Eagles season, like we had people over here, right? And like, my fiance is normal, right? And drinking was never really an issue for me. So like, there's alcohol in my house right now, right? Because she's normal, right? Like she can have, a beer or two and not, smoke crack. Like, that's what she can do. You know what I mean?
Really?
So like, yeah, who the fuck does that, right? So there's alcohol in my house right now. Like there's Coronas in my fridge as we speak, right?
Not Coronas, but I get it, yeah.
Right. So like, but it doesn't bother me because, and I'm not going to, try to force my thing on her right now. Obviously we wouldn't be together if she did other things. Right. But like, we have people over, like, we have people over for the fights. We go to UFC events and stuff like that. We went to Tom Segura's show Saturday night and they serve alcohol. My girl had a drink. My brother and his fiance or wife are also normal people, right? They had drinks, and I'm okay with that today. Like I can sit there and I can have fun, man. And I never thought that would be possible. I never thought that it would be possible to sit there and watch a whole Eagles game and not get up at halftime and go in the bathroom and do something to come back and watch the second half, and then to remember the whole game, right? Like, listen, 2017 when the Eagles won the Super Bowl is one of the greatest days of my life. I'll freely admit that I cried like a fucking baby, right? And luckily I was clean and sober at that time, and I remember that day, right? And now I remember a lot more days than I did before, even just regular days, right? And just regular things. I don't know, man. Like, I'm just so filled with gratitude these days. You know, I know you said, you've kind of been struggling with your mental health a little bit, and I've been on workman's comp since April. And, early on, because we have such this idea of, being a man and wrapped up in that, providing, and that's what you're supposed to do, right? And I have a fiance and I have 3 stepdaughters, and luckily I'm still getting a check, right? But it's not what I would be making if I was working. Also, the summertime is like the busy time for what I do, and I make a lot of overtime in the summertime. So I missed out on a lot of money, right? But we were still able to, nothing really sacrificed,
it
right?
was still just money. At the end of the
Right.
day, you have to say it that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
It was just money, not it
Right.
was just money. It was just period money, period.
Right. And we were still okay. You know what I mean? Everybody's struggling right now with what's going on in the world, but we were still able to take a visit to visit my mom, my fiance's mom in Puerto Rico. We were still able to have fun this summer and take the girls and do things and stuff like that. And
Yeah, that's awesome.
but
And you were able to
that weighs on.
travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. Oh, I know. I know how much it weighs, and I got, my wife's sick too, you know what I mean, with MS. So like I feel even more like that I need to provide. That I need to take care of her and make sure she's safe and make sure she's healthy. And
Right.
we have an 8-year-old. Well, she has an 8-year-old who's my stepson, and he's over here 5 days a week with us. So
Yeah.
I got to make sure that I'm good for him too, because if not, I'm just a basket case. And they started me on the Lumictal, or whatever that's called, Lumictal or something like that, where you have to do for 6 weeks and I don't know. I've heard it's good for bipolar, so we'll see what happens. But I've definitely been honest with my psychiatrist and my therapist lately, because there's no point. Like, I lied early on. I flat out told them. They're like, how did you not get screened for any of this when you were in rehab? I'm like, oh, I did. I just lied.
Right.
Because I was afraid they were going to give me a whole trove of medicines to take. And I didn't want to be a guinea pig then. I just wanted to get clean. And now that I'm 4 years away, that was 4.5 years ago. So now when I look back, I'm like, I did it for that. I did it to protect my early sobriety. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it, because I needed to go through all that shit early on. I needed to learn how to be a human, be on my own. And now that I'm like at that wit's end, it's good. It's good to fall back on and not be afraid. People ask for help. I know it's harder, especially if there's men listening. We're not supposed to ask for help, and Charlie and I are both proponents of talk to your doctor. Be honest with your doctor. Be honest with somebody, whether it's a sponsee or a sponsor, because the sponsee-sponsor relationship can both ways. So either way, just be honest with somebody, especially yourself.
Yeah.
Especially yourself.
I was lucky in the sense of, like, the medication. I was put on 2 other medications I've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety since I was 19 years old, and I was on and off of medication throughout the years, mostly off. And using and being an addict obviously doesn't help those things, right? So like 6 years ago, when one of the times when I tried to get clean, they put me on a couple of different meds, and there was different side effects or whatever. But I was lucky enough that the third one has helped. So I'm on 20 milligrams of Celexa every day. It's non-narcotic, like, for me and, guys like you, right? Like, I know that I can eat that whole bottle of pills and it's not going to do anything. I know that I can crush one up and snort it and it's not going to do anything, right? So, and it's kind of one of those things like I think you're talking about, like, they tell you it takes like 3 weeks for you to actually feel anything, for it to kind of work into your system.
Yeah, it's like 1 for the first 2 weeks, and then it's 2 daily, and then it's like up the milligram to like 100 for the other. And like I need to watch for a rash. Like
Okay.
that's the side effect that I need to watch out for, is a rash.
Right.
So I'm looking. There's been no rash. So far so good. But I've had 2 other people close to me literally get like prescribed it recently, and were telling me how great it's been. So keep my fingers crossed. I always got them crossed right there. I always got the fingers crossed, and just seeing what happens, man. I just keep being honest with people and trying to do my podcast when I have. Sometimes working all the time, it's hard for me to find the energy to like find a guest and do the whole 9.
Yeah.
And then with sports this week, and I saw that's what made me think of you. You posted earlier. You scrolling all the Phillies posts.
Yeah, because it's funny. Like I was having the discussion with my brother. Again, he's a big Phillies fan. I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I'm happy for the team, right? Happy for my friends that are and stuff. But like all these people start coming out of the woodwork with their Phillies jersey and their hat on, and go Phils. And I'm like, bro, I've never seen you talk about baseball ever in your life.
You
and now
posted a picture with the vet. You just posted a picture from the vet. You haven't been there in 18 years.
So my brother was like, I don't think you can be a bandwagon fan of your home team. And I'm like, I agree, right? I don't think you can be a bandwagon fan of your home team, but you can be a fair weather fan.
Yes.
And there's a difference, right? There's a big difference. A bandwagon fan to me is somebody that, like, if I was a Patriots fan during like the 2000s, right? I'm not from New England. I have no connection to New England really. But I only like that team because they were good. Or if I was a Yankees fan or something like that, right? But fair weather fan is just, like me, for instance, right? Everybody knows I'm not a baseball guy, right? But I wear Phillies hats because this is where I'm from. You know what I mean? And
they make some good hats.
Right. But if all of a sudden I started posting stuff, go Phils, and like started talking, like then people would be like, bro, like you don't even really like it. Like that's a fair weather fan to me.
Yeah.
Yep. You know what I mean? Like I support them, kind of from a distance. You know what I mean? But I'm happy that they're in there. I think it's great for the city. I'm happy for like friends and family that I know are big baseball fans, big Phillies fans.
I'll cry if they win. I know I'll cry if they win. I cried in 08 when we won. I do remember that. I might not remember a lot from 08. What's funny? I had a guy on my show and we talked about that, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, well in '93, the first time that when Joe Carter hit that home run against the Phillies in '93, he goes, I was setting up a line of my first time of sniffing heroin. It was during that game, and I remember looking up and seeing that home run and then doing a big line.
Oh, man.
And this guy's from Boston. This guy, you know what I mean? So he was like, I was just watching the World Series and just getting high. But he goes, I specifically remembered doing heroin for the first time and then watching you guys lose. So I'm like, great, because I was 7 years old and crying my first time watching sports. And not crying because we won.
I was 14, and I would say I was a little bit more of a baseball fan back then than I am now. So I was upset, obviously, but I was 14.
It's definitely the first time I cried watching sports. I was 7, and it was 100%.
I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah. But I would go to the games, and I would get the programs and fill out the, you know what I mean? Like I was a dork. I was going to the games. I wasn't trying to catch a ball. I was just trying to do the scoreboard.
Do the box score, yeah.
The box score, yeah. So, either way, thanks for sitting down with me again, bro. It's always nice catching up with you. And,
same. And listen, I'm so glad to see you back active. I understand why you had to step away now that we talked, and I'm glad that you did. And, you got to take care of you first. You know what I mean? But like I was just talking to my fiance before we jumped on here, and she was like, because I've done like 3 now, basically from TikTok, 3 people's podcasts. But you were the first one that I did. And again, thank you. And she was like, oh, that's the first one you did. And I was kind of just telling her about like, you know, what had happened. So man, again, like I'm just so happy to see you active again. Good guy, got a good page.
Thanks, brother.
Quick before I go, I want to give a shout
Yeah.
out to Savage Sisters on TikTok. They're a great organization, nonprofit in Philadelphia.
Send me their link. Send me their
I
link,
absolutely will.
and I'll put the
I
link.
absolutely will.
For people that are curious about what he's talking about, make sure that link is also, if you're listening or watching, it'll be in the bio or description.
I appreciate that, JD. I really appreciate that. Again, man, thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for being back.
Nice
I really
chatting.
appreciate it.
Always, bro. I'll talk to you soon. See you.
All right.